Welcome to Cultural Fluency Makers. I'm your host, David Wellisch. Each week, we welcome leaders to share how they stay ahead of the ever-changing consumer landscape. With today's cultural transformation, top brands need to understand diverse consumer segments from Gen Z, Hispanic, and LGBTQ+, to gamers, wine enthusiasts, and basketball fanatics in Iowa. Their marketing strategies require them to keep the pulse on their consumers, but also their brand in the category to continue to grow revenue for the long term. Cultural Fluency Makers is sponsored by Collage Group, the only cultural intelligence engine that provides brand and consumer insights on the why that drives consumer behavior and purchase decisions. Let's get started. I am so excited about today's episode, not just because of the person that I'll be speaking with, but this is directly from Amsterdam. So with me today is a global marketing leader known for turning cultural insight into campaigns that capture attention around the world. Over the course of her career, she has built and led international teams, forged high-impact partnerships across industries, and helped shape some of the most recognizable brand moments in travel marketing. Her work blends creativity, storytelling, and data-driven strategy to build brands that resonate across cultures and channels. Along the way, she's earned industry recognition as a Gold Stevie Award winner and the most innovative woman of the year in advertising, marketing, and public relations. She's the SVP of Marketing and Creative at Expedia Group. Natalie Wills, it is so great to have you on the show.
Wow, thank you for such a wonderful introduction, David. Thank you. Great to be here.
Let's do it. So Natalie, your father was a human rights lawyer who represented Nelson Mandela. How did growing up in a household centered on justice and human rights shape your perspective on the role that brands should play in social change? Such a relevant theme these days.
Yeah, I think, what a great question to ask, and super proud of the upbringing that I've had because, you know what, actually, when I was growing up, I didn't think it was anything unusual because we just grew up in a household that was, very inclusive and backed by a lot of values and principles around inclusivity and fairness and how diversity makes us better. And so it was actually quite interesting, especially like when I first started doing an international marketing role. It was very interesting to discover that that wasn't really the norm everywhere. So I think probably the first thing that comes to mind is that upbringing really helps me shape my team because I do like 100% wholeheartedly believe that having like amazing diverse teams and people representing different cultures and people representing their countries is so important for us to help get the work right. But also it like fosters like a deep understanding about like why certain people are very passionate about things because they obviously come from such different backgrounds and challenges and etc. So I would say it's probably helped me be a more insight-driven marketeer because it's just not my opinion in terms of what we do, but it's really like I want the brands to be rooted in consumer insight. I want to understand local cultures where the brands show up. You can't just do a campaign in the US and expect it to work in Nigeria, and you also can't expect your team all to work the same way. So I think probably just really helped to broaden my mind and to allow me to appreciate different perspectives and opinions.
Which is, I think, in the role that you play, it's so critical. Like you, I'm also an immigrant to this country. I was born in Ecuador, but you were born in Zimbabwe. You were raised in South Africa. You've built your career across cities like London, Berlin, and Amsterdam. How has that shaped the way that you think about storytelling, about communication, and really about connecting with audiences around the world?
Totally. And I think, once again, I'm so thankful for all of these experiences because like that's actually why I've landed in travel, because I do feel that travel is just such an incredible category to work in. The fact that I've been able to travel and explore different career paths, etc., has made me such a much stronger marketeer. Because if you actually like living and breathing the society, you have to become more understanding. You have to sort of appreciate different cultures. You have to understand consumers in a different way. And I think it just has propelled me forward, amazingly. But I would say in terms of how it's helped shape brands, I would say I've always really worked in global roles, and something that's been always a big kind of bugbear of mine is that like a lot of the time with brands, you design for your lead markets, whether that's the US or the UK or somewhere probably in Western Europe. And then all of the other countries around the world just basically get some form of that if they're lucky. So I'm a big believer in if you're going to do marketing, like let's do it properly and make sure that you're taking into consideration local insights. You working out local nuances, like where people actually even consume the media. So even if you're taking somewhere like Japan, people are consuming more media on like Line and YouTube versus the traditional channels that we use, for example, in US, more of the Metas and TikTok, etc. So I just think it's the multitude of different questions that you need to ask yourself, which is how do you actually connect with consumers locally to basically tell a rich story that feels that it's going to resonate with them versus something that they will just scroll past in a hurry. So yes, I think the reason that I've probably been in global marketing for so long is because I feel that it's so diverse. There's so many markets. There's so many consumers you speak to all the time. And it's an area that I think you can make some significant change and do really well with those changes.
That's great. Thank you. If we travel to the US, welcome.
Thank you. I spend a lot of time there. Let me tell you, I'm basically half American here.
Are you so gosh, this place has changed demographically significantly in the last 10, 15, 20 years. Given such shift, demographic where really diverse audiences are driving really the growth of so many categories and definitely play a big role in travel as well. What do you see, Natalie, the role for cultural intelligence or cultural insights for consumer companies like Expedia?
Yeah, wow. First of all, I think that the US is so big, it's mind blowing, right? So there's just so many cultures there. There's from state to state. I mean, it really is such a huge market. And I always think, my goodness, like from a government perspective, like governments of the Netherlands are so lucky because it's just such a small amount of people that they have to basically convince, whereas the US is so big and it's just a melting pot of different beliefs, cultures, everything. So I think and we also know it's a very expensive market for brands to succeed in because of its scale and the ability to reach so many consumers. You pay to reach them. So of all the markets in the world, it's the most expensive from a media perspective. So I think with all of that said, I think the US, if you are going to have a strategy to like go into the US, you really need to seriously think about it. This is going to be a long-term, probably pretty expensive strategy. But from a consumer insight perspective, I think that the US has so many amazing subcultures. And I think just simply, like if we think of it as like a whole lot of different countries together, there's just so many subcultures that you can market to. So even now, like coming up to the Football World Cup, you can think like in the US, there's huge support for every single one of those teams that's living in the US. And there's an ability to like market and target specific subcultures. So something that we've recently done is we've partnered with football with the football league, Liga MX, which is, I'm sure, as you know, from being Latin American. And this transcends the US because there's so many Latin American consumers in the US. So I feel like it's very much about subculture marketing in the US. Obviously, there's still a big need to do some premium advertising on linear TV. But I think where we have really like gone deep is like, how do we target different consumers and different needs with different creative in a whole lot of different channels? So it doesn't make the effort any easier, but I think there's no point in just putting a matching luggage approach of your creative to the whole of the US because it's too big for one thing to work.
No, for sure, it's most people say, gosh, cultural insights, given what you just described, are really important, in order to really go deep into understanding consumer, which ultimately means that marketing resonates, right? Like at least you've got half the equation right. My question with that is, what's hard? Like what is hard about getting this sort of cultural intelligence right, or cultural insights right, and even cultural relevance right? What's hard?
Well, there's probably a lot of hard things about that because well, first of all, I'll take it from a very functional perspective, is it's quite hard unless you have like a very strong partner in helping you to acquire those insights, or you have a great internal team that's really focused on like digging deep into the research. Um, I suppose maybe some people are pretty limited in terms of the information that they can get hold of. Maybe within the age of ChatGPT and Claude, this will probably become a bit easier. But then I think obviously, like often there's like a budgetary concern because it's very difficult to make like different creative, different messaging for multiple different cultures. So the easier way is to do something which is more generic, that maybe appeals to the masses but doesn't really talk to each subculture. So I think that's probably where like an incredible media plan comes in, because as with a lot of brands, I think we see such success in working with amazing content creators that we know for a fact that most people trust people versus brands. So if we can sort of work with a whole lot of like really influential content creators and give them a very loose brief to try and explain to their culture in terms of how our product can be useful to them, then I think that's a more compelling thing than having an advertisement perhaps in many situations. So I think you need to think about the diversity of the channel mix, the creatives, and then also the richness of the consumer insight that you basically take into the initial brief to make those decisions on creative and media.
Thank you. So let's switch to branding a little bit. And you, now that you oversee an umbrella of brands, and so from a brand perspective, gosh, how do you balance both? How do you maintain the unique soul of brands like Vrbo or hotels.com while leveraging synergies for scale at the same time? I'm sure not an easy balancing act.
No, it's not easy, but what does make it easy is that we do have three very unique consumer brands. So we have Expedia, which is obviously very well known in the US, and it's kind of your one-stop shop for all your travel needs. So if you are looking to book more than one item or just one, it has it all. And then you have hotels.com, which is a pure play where we are literally just, we are the hotel experts. We sell the best deals on hotels and you get amazing rewards. And the type of consumer that uses that brand tends to be looking for something that is maybe on more short term. So maybe not such a long trip. And then obviously we have Vrbo, which is our vacation rental site, which has a beautiful, beautiful supply of incredible vacation homes in multitude of different cities around the world. So they are very different in terms of what they offer. I think one of the amazing parts of my job has really been bringing to life like their uniqueness and bringing to life the things that they offer to consumers. Because I think your brand is really nothing unless you have some kind of, you know, foundation to back it up. So I can put all I want into marketing, but if I have nothing really interesting to say to customers in terms of why they should use our brands, then it just kind of blurs into sort of matching travel category advertising. So what I've been very fortunate to do is really pushing each of the brand teams to work out, like, how do we talk about these incredible product benefits that we have in an easy and simple way to all of our consumers around the world, so they can understand very easily, like, why I would choose Expedia over any other OTA. And sorry, OTA is something, we use so many acronyms in this place, but OTA stands for online travel agents. So just in case like people are listening, like, what is she talking about? But yeah, it's been so wonderful to like basically really like dig deep into the insights, like work out what products and messages resonate with each of the different target demographics of each of the brands. So even though we have scale in terms of many of the teams like service all three brands, we have a lot of uniqueness in terms of identifying like what each brand stands for, the key things that we are going after in each market, and the whole company is aligned to those key principles.
Not like I'm visualizing a big map in a big matrix, brand, geographies.
I wish I was that organized.
So, I was at this, at the conference, at the Possible conference in Miami. Yeah, a couple of weeks ago. I don't think I can't remember how many sessions were there where AI was not front and center. And so let's get into it a little bit. Your research shows that travelers are actually skeptical of a fully AI generated sort of landscape. How do you balance, again, this efficiency of AI with a human touch that travelers clearly still crave?
And are you talking about more from a creative sense, or are you talking about just in general from our research that we recently did?
The research, which I think leads to creative, but yeah, generally the research that you guys just did, yeah.
No, I mean, I think that, and all of us are consumers. So, I think all of us obviously experience these same doubts and things every day. So I think whilst everybody understands that AI can help them with efficiencies, there still comes a time when when you're having maybe an issue with your travel, or you just want to speak to a person. And that's when it's important to have a human in the loop, because there's nothing more frustrating than getting on a phone and then it's basically like you keep on talking to a robot. So I think there's definitely times where we know like travel is such a big commitment to a lot of people. Many people don't have, many holidays a year. Obviously, travel has got like pretty expensive. There's a lot of issues going on in the world that like make people a bit more nervous to travel. And so they need to actually understand that they're booking their travel with a brand that they can trust, like a brand that actually has their back. So if something goes wrong, there's going to be a solution to help them. And I think within that journey, there still is human in the loop, because, some people, like if they're having a bad trip, they need to speak to someone. And then when it gets to more creative, what we've seen, and I'm sure you saw, but there was a Super Bowl campaign that was made like 100% from AI this year. And consumers really didn't like it. And I think there's also just a lot of AI content being created. And I'm not saying that it's bad, because I think that obviously that's the way of the world. There is going to be a lot of content created with AI, but I still do think that you need the brilliant creative minds setting the creative strategy, coming up with the creative idea, like digging deep into the research and insights and making sure that even if they're briefing AI to create the creative, that it's based on a very clear strategic brief that is still going to resonate to customers. Because there's no point in us putting creative out that customers are just going to think, well, that didn't really appeal to me. So I think from a brand perspective, and especially like I can talk to the creative element of it, we still see a really big need to have a lot of strategy and brilliant creative minds in the loop. And then AI is just an incredible opportunity for our creatives because they can scale. They can, they can make sort of mood boards for a plethora of ideas in like one day, And so I just feel it's given them so much like free headspace to really focus on like the strategy and the things that are really important. So I'm excited about the age of AI because I do think that it's already like helping us so much. And I can see my creative teams like really getting so excited about how it's helping them to focus on the bigger, more strategic items.
It's such an exciting time from an innovation perspective. And innovation is fun because you're discovering, you're exploring, there's a creative energy that comes with that. Now, there's AI and then there's agentic marketing, which is obviously, linked, but it's taking it to the next level. So with the rise of AI agents, the consumer isn't necessarily a human anymore. It might be an algorithm. How does your brand strategy change when you're actually marketing to an AI travel assistant that is making the decision for the human? Are you guys, are you there yet? Is that part of the conversation?
Yeah, I definitely think, I mean, we're, one of the leading tech companies in the world. So it's definitely on our radar. And it's something that we're deeply interested in. I can say that there's definitely project that that we're we have dedicated teams on that are looking at like how we basically market to agents. So I think even something as, obviously like one of the things is like channels that weren't necessarily super important in the search era have like all of a sudden come back. So if you can think about like where are a lot of the agents getting their information from? So they're getting like from review sites or customer platforms where people write a lot of information. So all of these things like Reddit and Quora and things like TripAdvisor, et cetera, are becoming so important because that's where a lot of the information is coming from. So I think for every brand, it's quite interesting because you are sort of looking at the channels and you're diversifying so much more. And it's a very different set of marketing channels that you need to look at versus, traditional search. And it's a super interesting time. And I feel like we get told about one thing that's happening and it's super exciting. And then like 10 hours later, something else has happened and it's changed. And so it's very, it's just completely moving. And I mean, even once again, for my creative team, I mean, we use one tool and then the next day there's a better tool. And so I think there's also sort of an element we have to deal with of like fatigue because people just get updated on something and then it's like, okay, there's another tool. So, which is obviously great to work in a dynamic environment, but I also want my teams to be focused on things that really help them versus spending a lot of energy on things that are not necessarily a going concern.
I think we're in this era of the next new shiny object, right? How to recognize what's real and what's not. I have Natalie, I have the honor of being able to have these discussions with great marketing leaders like yourself, also moderate many roundtables. And, we get to this question about cultural relevance and everybody agrees in order to win consumers' hearts and minds, you gotta be cultural relevant. I wanted to ask you, do you have a point of view on the role of synthetic audiences, which is it's like the next new thing from an insights perspective. Are you using them? Do you believe in them? What's your take? If cultural relevance is the North Star and synthetic audiences get you there?
From my side, I think it's helpful in terms of maybe some of the more consistent research that you do all the time. So it could be helpful in terms of scaling your brand track, for example. If you are able to get to a point where you actually like have a synthetic audience that actually like you feel really works. But I personally feel like with research and insights, there's nothing better than being in a focus group and listening to what people say, because that's where you get like real gold for campaigns. Like I remember I was in a recent focus group where we were talking about like loyalty platforms, and one consumer said to me like, you know what, the problem with all loyalty programs is it's just like homework. Like all of you brands just expect us to do all the homework for you, and we don't want to do math. And those type of comments are like, you would never get that from a synthetic audience. Well, at least not now. And that's kind of marketing gold, because that helps you unlock such an incredible insight and a creative idea that you can jump off. You can be like, wow, thank you for that. Um, so whilst I do think that I do think research and insights, there's obviously going to be a huge amount of AI disruption, because there's a lot of very laborious tasks in research and insights. There's a lot of like cleaning of the data, and where I think research and insights can go is, having agents to help with all that cleaning of the data. And then you have the brilliant minds that analyze the data and bring those insights to life for their teams.
It's fascinating. As Collage, we're at the center of so many brands and in these conversations, and there's such a spectrum. I mean, there are brands and people that are all in, and they've built, hundreds of synthetic audiences that represent the consumer, and then there are the ones that are more on the, on the other side of it. And I agree with you that ultimately these you called it gold, right? Like these kernels of insights. When you get to one, and that can be the reason and the impetus for an entire campaign. But this will be a fascinating space to watch, and we're getting into some experimentation. We're lucky because we're sitting on so much proprietary data of years and years that allows us to then experiment.
I mean, you guys are at the forefront of this. I should be asking you this question.
Well, we again, what's fun is that we can actually compare, and that's what we're going to be doing. And then we can also, it'll be fascinating because you can create personas based on all of the data that you have already collected over years, which I would assume I think I think it's an augmented synthetic.
Yeah, I like that. I like that idea. So it's basic, because similar to sort of the creative lens, like often you need to build like a very good sort of strong 3D model of something before you can put it in an AI tool and get the best creative. So I agree. It's probably like a little bit of a mixture of both, where it's super helpful to have like the real rich data. But I think that one of the biggest struggles that I think a lot of insights teams have is that, by the time they're producing the quarterly report, like the data is kind of outdated. So there's obviously a need there to have like more real-time things. And I think that definitely like AI and technology can super support there, whether that's through synthetic audiences or inputting the data and analyzing it more quickly or whatever it may be. But it's definitely ripe for AI to support in that area in a big way.
Completely agree. So, Natalie, we're going to move into the last part of the show here, which is a little more personal. So, question one is, what inspires you? What motivates you to do what you do every day? I know you travel a bunch, and we just heard a description of countries, brands, audiences, diversity. I mean, there's a lot. What inspires you?
I have always been so inspired to just work on great, exciting, challenging things. And when I look back at my career, it's never been a situation where I've been like, oh, I chased the money, or I've moved to all of these countries, which is obviously like a big sacrifice in many ways, because moved away from family and friends. But I've always just trusted my gut and said, like, that sounds like freaking exciting and something that I can really like learn from at like a really crazy pace. And so actually, like, I tell my team that the thing that inspires me is I am definitely a journey person. And what I mean by that is I kind of put people in two kind of categories with their career. Like, you're either a destination person or a journey person. I am a journey person. I need to be on the journey in a company. I'm totally fine with things like not being all perfect, but then you have incredible opportunity to grow and meet new people and work on incredible things. Versus a lot of people, that level of change and disruption can perhaps be too much for them. And they would prefer to be in companies where perhaps, you know, their things have been done before, they have more systems in place, and they feel more secure. And that's totally fine. But I feel like I'm so inspired by getting into a company and seeing like, oh my gosh, what can I fix? What can I do? How can I, you know, really like make sure I supercharge this brand? So that has always inspired me in all of my career choices. But I'd say the other like thing that personally inspires me is I'm just I really want to show people that I mean, I'm just a girl from Zimbabwe who literally I came from a very normal background with, you know, very normal friends, very normal parents, and I've managed to do really great things because I've just trusted my gut and I've believed in myself. And I think there's not a lot of people that talk about those stories, and I really feel that I'm really inspired by people like contacting me and asking me for help, and I'll try and do that in any way that I can, whether it's sort of opening my network to them or supporting their growth in whatever way possible. But yeah, I feel very lucky to be doing this amazing job and to be living in this incredible country. So yeah, I'm just generally very optimistic.
I love the energy, and this is a question that I ask every single guest, so it's real fascinating to hear. But I've never heard the journey, the journey and the destination. I love that. I'm in the journey, and this last question is really geared towards our younger audience, who, I think with the advent of AI and so forth, there's so much, in many ways, wisdom needed for them to figure everything out. So, if you could travel back in time, I'm taking a little bit of minutes to so that you get to the back in time. I think we got there. Give your 20-year-old self advice.
Yeah, so I feel that advice would be you don't have to have everything figured out before you start living, because I think so many people are like, well, I need to do this degree, or I need to like do this internship, and I need to do this, or I need to get fit and healthy and blah, blah. I just think throw yourself in, live your life. Opportunities will come past you in more ways than one. And just literally like get stuck in. I feel like you don't have to have everything worked out. Life is, it's going back to the journey versus destination person, because I feel like if it was all worked out and wrapped up in a neat bow, it would never be so exciting. So just get stuck in. Not everything's going to work out, but most stuff does. And just start living. Like I think that's such a barrier for people just starting, It's always that, even entrepreneurs talk about it. It's just get stuck in, just start. And then you can go from there.
That was 16 years for me. So where we started the company. What a beautiful way of ending the show. Start living. I think that should be the title. Start living.
Start living.
Natalie, I so much gratitude. Thank you so much for a fantastic episode where you've shared some kernels of gold, and just being so candid and honest. So really, really appreciate it.
No problem. Thank you so much for having me, and I hope it was helpful.
Absolutely. And this has been another exciting episode of Cultural Fluency Makers. See you next time. That's a wrap on another episode of Cultural Fluency Makers. Thank you for joining us. Please share your comments and what you would like to hear more about. Be as specific as possible. For show notes and more, please visit culturalfluencymakers.com. This show is proudly sponsored by Collage Group, unleashing the power of cultural intelligence to fuel brand growth. Please follow Collage Group on LinkedIn, and we will see you next week.